Good day, everyone. Welcome to Blacklogic. A majority now back California aggressive redistricting to offset Texas, even if it mimics GOP tactics that once they denounced. Israel mobilizes 60,000 troops, tightening the noose on Gaza City as tanks, airstrikes, and civilian evacuation signal an all-out offensive on Gaza. A fresh Russian drone and missile barrage strikes eastern Ukraine, killing one, injuring 15, and jolting the fragile front line. Brian Cornell announces retirement as Target bleeds profits and public trust, capping a 11-year tenure rocked by DEI backlash and flatlining sales. Federal regulators sue the gym giant over shady cancellation policies, accusing them of trapping members in endless billing cycles. And the question I have for you guys is America have turned all the way right, left, or are we still neutral? So you thought that Democrats hated gerrymandering. A lot of people thought that, but we can't really go in on the Democrats on this particular one. And me not being a Democrat, not being a Republican. But nonetheless, a new national poll just flipped the script because most Democrats now support California's plan to redraw congressional maps, not to make it fairer, but to counteract Texas' aggressive redistrict tactics that they've done. The same party that once cried foul now cheers the power move. And California's Senate is steamrolling through legislation that could net 5 additional House seats for Democrats, the same as they did in Texas. So as we are here in late 2025, the political hypocrisy at its finest, where maps wars are fair game if your team playing dirt. And this is a long-term ploy. This is a very long-term play by the Democrats. And believe it or not, I agree. If the Republicans are going to gerrymander voting seats, Republican seats within Texas to up-seat Democrats so they can win and have a larger footprint of Republican in Texas, because again, Texas is a red state when you look at all the delegates, as well as how people vote majority, but there are Democratic enclaves within Texas. California is doing the same thing. California is a majority blue state, but they do have some parts of California where they are considered Republicans and or red. So they're doing the same thing that Texas is doing. I don't see why anybody would be against this. See, this is what I was referring to, not aligning yourself with political parties, because if you are Republican, you're going to give excuse why California shouldn't do it. Look at all the homelessness. Look at it, the prices are so high. You're going to go into that particular rant, and then vice versa. How property tax in certain states and red states are more expensive. How people in, like, take for instance Mississippi. When you look at the total population of Mississippi, how many people live in poverty? But you sent your National Guard to assist Donald Trump in the, in my opinion, the martial law of DC. I digress. But as I look at these very stark differences between the mindset, ideology, and actions of red versus blue, the American people always lose. Now, some places may be in better shape than others, but for the long haul, when we have governments, we have politicians doing whatever the hell they want to do and not even really trying to win your vote, right? They're just basically garnering electoral stance within certain districts, because traditionally that is how those people vote. But I do, in some regards, applaud the Democrats for at least fighting back and not taking the sitting down, because, hey, if Texas can do it, so can California. If Governor Abbott can do it, so can Governor Gavin Newsom. So again, I applaud them in this regard. And Barack Obama, out of all people, had to chime in on this. Of course, he can't stay out of the limelight. He says, over the long term, we shouldn't have political gerrymandering in America. Just a fair fight between Republicans and Democrats based on who's got better ideas. And I agree with President Barack Obama. But since Texas is taking direction from a partisan White House and gerrymandering in the middle of a decade to try and maintain the House despite their unpopular policies, I have tremendous respect for how Governor Newsom have approached this. He's put forward a smart, measured approach in California designed to address a very particular problem at a very particular moment in time. At the NDRC, it says we're grateful to President Barack Obama for being in this fight with us and supporting our mission. California is advancing a process that gives voters the final say on implementing new maps. And as I show you this graphic here, it states that Election Rigging Response Act, because they're really trying to stop it, especially in California. And I believe all states should do this. Red, blue, purple, in between. I believe that they all should do this. But again, I agree with Governor Gavin Newsom as well as former President Barack Obama. I do. I don't agree with them much, believe it or not. I do not agree with them with a lot of things they've done. And they were talking about unpopular policies. That's what President Barack Obama stated, unpopular policies. Some of the policies that the conservatives have put in place under the Trump administration has been pretty good. Some of the policies I actually agree with. Some of the business policies, I'm still indifferent about the tariffs, the immigration policies, and some of the things that are occurring there. Not all of the policies are bad. Now, when it comes to the one big, beautiful, as Elon Musk would say, the one big, beautiful abomination, ugly bill, there's some things in the bill that are beneficial to America and Americans, and then there's some things that are detrimental to America and Americans. So I'm kind of 50-50 on that one as well. So I don't believe that it's all bad. Now, a ground war is no longer looming. It's loading because the IDF have ramped up bombardment across Gaza City, especially in neighborhoods like Sabra and Tafuf, and chilling escalation. Israel called up an additional 60,000 reservists and gave evacuation warnings to civilians still sheltering in the area. And their goal here, folks, is to capture and occupy Gaza City, which they stated is a Hamas stronghold and now a humanitarian disaster zone. And this comes even as Hamas reportedly agreed to a ceasefire deal, but Israel is pressuring forward, citing military necessity over diplomacy. And as you kind of comb through a lot of these stories, Hamas is willing to basically go away if they do not try to occupy Gaza City. Because the city right now is surrounded and the people are stranded. We're talking about almost 2 million people. And they're stating that there's still roughly 5,000 to 10,000 Hamas fighters in the area. So you're going to occupy and displace. First of all, you want to occupy a city and displace 2 million people based upon 10,000 people. And again, the entire, Gaza Strip, the region of Gaza is destroyed. And you're talking about rebuilding and putting townhouses and condos and beachfront property. Civilians in Gaza City face a very terrifying choice here, guys. They stay and risk death or flee into a war zone with entire neighborhoods under siege. And aid workers warn of a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Hamas has already, reported agreed to a ceasefire. But Israel isn't waiting, and the world watches horrified as one of the most densely populated places on earth becomes a battlefield. That is what's going on currently in Gaza. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the West Bank. That's also part of the Palestinian state or the Palestinian region, okay? Even though America doesn't recognize, from a governmental standpoint, doesn't recognize Palestine as a statehood or as a country, even though there's Palestinians and they have flags and they have government officials. I digress. But some European nations stating that in this upcoming, or did it already occur? I'll have to check on that for you guys. If that UN meeting occurred, that they recognize Palestine as a statehood. And here's something else. Benjamin Netanyahu is on a mission to seize the Middle East, people are stating. Because he's not only going in to occupy Gaza, he is also making moves on the West Bank, no less. When South Africa brought the charge of genocide against Israel at the International Court of Justice, the court gave Israel 9 months to present its rebuttal. That expired at the end of July. The panel of 17 judges accepted Israel's argument that it needed more time to prepare its case because of issues in South Africa's case. So now you have a country that is far less powerful than Israel, because the reason why Israel is powerful as it is because it has the backing of the American government. But you have South Africa calling foul of genocide in Gaza. And the the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, gave them 9 months to give a rebuttal. 9 months as people are being killed, unalive, murdered. I mean, you name it, ladies and gentlemen. 9 months to give a rebuttal? No, you have 72 hours. You better use Chat GPT, Claude AI. You better use Gronk. You better use Gemini. You can get 9 months to come up with a rebuttal. And Israel just ignored it. Now, it stated that, let me blow this up for you guys. Okay, let me blow this up for you guys. I want to make sure I hit the key point here. It stated that in those 9 months, more than 250 Palestinians, nearly half of them children, have died of starvation, created expressly as a weapon of war by Israel's cabinet. And the carnage has continued unabated. Thousands more civilians have been killed by bombings, and tens of thousands are set to die if Israel forces retake Gaza City. And that is exactly what's occurring today. Where's the ICJ? And it states that if the ICJ remains paralyzed, the same applies to its sister court, the International Criminal Court. As Middle Eastern Eye has reported in some detail, the arrest warrants against Netanyahu and his former defense minister had been effectively neutralized. This was by means of an organized and orchestrated campaign of vilification that forced the British chief prosecutor, Carmen Khan, to take leave pending the outcome of an external investigation to accusations of sexual assault allegations of Khan regularly denies. So they got all these things occurring. But no one is stepping in and stating that what Israel is doing in Gaza and the West Bank, again, I want to bring attention to the West Bank. Israel is forming a fine line of divide in the West Bank and expanding their territory. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're seeing here now, listen, I'm not pro or against Israel. I'm not anti-Semitic. You got to say these things because that's what people think when you start speaking on this historical facts and the information that is presented in front of you. They are expanding their territory like they have done in the past. And essentially because Palestine is not recognized by the UN as of yet. And again, I may look that up for you guys. Israel is continuing to expand their landmass and pretty much look like in the next 10 years or so, there will be no Palestine. It will only be Israel with a large population of Palestinians within the region. That is the kind of the way that I'm looking at this. And I again, as I stated, instead of just waiting, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to see if that meeting occurred where the UN has started recognizing Palestine as a state. And this has been going on for quite some time. I want you guys to look at this. Western nations are taking a key step toward a two-state solution. They've been trying to do this for a very long time. As I told you guys, the UN had a partition plan of making the state of Palestine a two-state solution, and it has not worked. They've been at conflict and battles and wars for a very long time. Here's the problem right here. France, Britain, Canada, Australia, and Malta all say they are preparing to recognize, preparing to recognize a state of Palestine at the upcoming United Nations General Assembly in September. Okay, I thought this was going to occur in August, but it's in September. By that time, Israel will have already been occupying Gaza. as they have in the West Bank. They stated that they would join another 147 UN countries that already do so. In some senses, the move is symbolic. It will not change the realities on the ground in the Middle East, at least not in the short term, but it is a major step nonetheless. And here's the thing. Have an emergency meeting before then. As the ground offenses of the IDF is occurring right now, it states that no Israeli-Palestinian peace process is currently underway, because there isn't. The countries pledging recognition is noted in their statements. This is because Israel refuses to speak with diplomatic representative of the Palestinian people. The Palestine Liberation Organization. In effect, Israel has held the PLO and its subsidiaries, the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, and the Fatah political party responsible for the actions of all Palestinians, including the PLO's extremist arch rival Hamas. So they're saying you guys are the reason why Hamas are doing the things that they're doing. I wonder if we ever could say that white supremacist neo-Nazi groups in America, that we shall hold the United States at fault for allowing those guys to exist and or operate. That is the same thing that Israel is doing when it comes to the PLO. The United States, for its part, has never had a bilateral relationship with the Palestinians. You know why? Because America does not recognize Palestine as a statehood, as a country, as a sovereign nation. They don't. President Trump said it himself. And there's a lot of people, okay, on the right, quote unquote, Republicans and social media influencers that agree with President Trump. There's there's some, very few on the left also agree with President Trump. But for the vast majority of the world, people are recognizing the Palestinian people, the Palestinian region, and the Palestinian statehood. Why hasn't the UN called for an emergency meeting with these so-called Western nations that will recognize Palestine as a statehood and render UN troops to stop the onslaught of the occupying and senseless killing of Palestinians? I'm just asking questions because I'm not that smart when it comes to politics. Someone will probably tell me there's no so-called emergency UN meeting. I would beg to differ. I would beg to differ, ladies and gentlemen. This is absolutely crazy, and it's happening in modern day times. Let me move on. I don't want to stay here too long because I have a little bit more to cover here. Because Eastern Ukraine takes another brutal hit and Putin isn't slowing down. Russia unleashed a massive drone and missile attack on Ukraine, killing at least one person and injuring 15 others. Now, the strike targeted both military installations and civilian infrastructure in the Donetsk region, intensifying global calls for increased defense and aid to Kiev. And the frequency and scale of these attacks underscore a very chilling reality. Putin's war is grinding on with no clear end in sight. And again, he's already informed President Zelensky of Ukraine there's two things you can do to stop this war. And he's also reverberated these same sentiments to President Trump to garner this ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia. First and foremost, you give back Crimea that we gave to you out of the kindness of our heart. We want Crimea back. And that you agree on paper that you will never, ever join NATO. Because again, initially, Crimea, I think, which is a peninsula, actually belongs originally to Russia. But I think back in 1953, I could be off a year or two, gave Crimea to Ukraine when the Soviet Union divided, when the Soviet Union broke up. So again, Crimea does belong to Ukraine legally, but now President Putin said we want Crimea back. And we want you guys not to join NATO. So in order to stop this war, and listen, as these so-called ceasefire and peace talks are occurring between Ukraine, America, and Russia, and again, America being the intermediary, being the mediator with this, Russia is still attacking Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen. you still have a lot of war going on in the region here. So the reports from yesterday were stating that the Kremlin doesn't see any end to the attacks unless they give Crimea back, they remove their troops, and they agree to never join NATO. I wonder, if I was the president of Ukraine, what would I do? Would I give up a piece of land that was originally Russia, and now they're going back and forth with this land as a bargaining chip? And some people may see this as a way that Russia is expanding their empire. And it makes me think about something I said yesterday, and I misspoke on this. So again, I'm not above approach. I do make mistakes because a lot of my information, again, sometimes is in my head. And no one put this in my comment section, by the way, but I'm gonna go ahead and correct myself. Alaska is not closer to America than it is to Russia. Okay, and I can probably pop up a map here very quickly, but Alaska is closer to Russia. Alaska is connected to Canada, and in some regards, you have to go through Canada to reach Alaska. And again, I think you can take a boat if you're trying to leave from Washington and kind of bypass Canada altogether. I might just want to do this for you guys very quickly. So again, I always like to correct myself because we all can be wrong sometimes. Let me pop this in Google Earth very quickly so we all can see. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I popped in Alaska. I don't know what it's doing here. Let's see if it goes to Alaska. All right. So as we zoom, here's Alaska. Hopefully, guys, you guys can see that. Okay, here's Alaska. And then you have British Columbia here. Okay. Northwest Territories, but you have Vancouver, Seattle, Washington right here. So in order to get to Alaska, you will have to take a ferry or a boat that bypasses Canada altogether and come up through the Gulf of Alaska into Anchorage. If not, you have to go through Canada. Okay, let me give you a better orientation. You will have to go through Canada and reach Fairbanks and reach Fairbanks, Alaska. Now, most people fly. Some people take ferries, and some people actually drive through Canada to get to Alaska. And as I was stating, yes, Alaska is closer to Russia. My apologies, it's closer to Russia than it is to America. It's some very strategic land that we bought from Russia that cost us $7.2 million, 586,000 miles of land, or square miles of land rather, that cost us 2 cents per acre. And look how close we are to Russia. Here's Russia on the left, and here's Alaska on the right. Okay. Right here, you see Tent City, York on the bridge, and then you go right into Russia. Now, I wonder where Sarah Palin lived at, where she can see Russia from her patio. Where's Sarah Palin at in this? I'm asking for a friend. But again, I had to correct myself because I was totally inaccurate on that. I was totally wrong. So again, I wanted to just correct myself. But again, that's just something that I wanted to look at very, very quickly because I thought I was strong in geography. Well, I misspoke. No big deal. No big deal. All right, let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, here we go. So when it comes to the takeover of DC by the way of President Trump and his influence over DC law enforcement, it has deepened as his allies push for expanded federal oversight. Now, with Trump-backed leader influencing city policy, critics call it a soft coup, while supporters see it as a needed clamp down on lawlessness. And the National Guard presence, the controversy, policing policies, and calls for a federalized response now define the Capitol. And this left is, the left is outraged, but the right, they're doubling down. And for all those patriots out there that are supporting the military, I do applaud you guys, regardless of how the patriots look and regardless of the color and race of the patriots that are standing ground and carrying weapons and riot deterrents on them. You have a military police officer here, this gentleman on the right. They have also, states outside of DC have provided aid and National Guard troops by the way of Mississippi, Ohio, and South Carolina. Now, out of those three, I was just trying to figure out, out of those three states, who has the highest crime rate out of those three states? And why haven't they deployed National Guard troops in some of their war-torn cities that have increased crime rates that is more than DC per capita? Okay, per capita. I just have those questions because I think it's really interesting to point those differences out. Now, 11 years and 11 flat quarters and now the door. Brian Cornell is stepping down as Target CEO this February, ending a very long and rocky tenure. The company just reported its 11th straight quarter of flat or falling sales, with profits down 19% from last year. And the leadership shakeup comes internal tensions, which is a rollback of the DEI initiatives and growing competition from Walmart and Amazon. And the COO, Michael Furduck, will take over, inheriting the challenge of reinventing a retail giant on the brink of irrelevance. Now, we can kind of blame this on DEI. That would be the emotional response. But the truth of the matter is, we're talking about the CEO, Brian Cornell, has been in place 11 years. And the sales for Target has either been flat or falling in 11 years. And DEI pushed it over the top. We're talking about $12 billion in loss. It states here that Target, the company lost $12.4 billion in market value since the start of the boycott after canceling $2 billion DEI promise. And this is reported by the Black Millionaires. It stated that, again, Target has seen its market value shrink by $12.4 billion following a boycott that's erupted after the retailer scaled back its diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the decline, which hit hard in late February 2025, coincident with a steep drop in the company's stock price. The boycott, driven primarily by Black community leaders and shoppers, is being compared to historic efforts like the Montgomery bus boycott for its scale and influence. And I applaud the show of power and force by utilizing Black economics to show America what they potentially could be facing. But this is for the wrong reason, in my opinion. I know. Again, ladies and gentlemen, they did this because the counseling of $2 billion in DEI initiatives. I totally disagree. Everybody statistically have been reporting this, whether it be on mass media, social networks, social media, etc., that DEI has not benefited Black Americans on a large scale like it has white women and white men and immigrants. There's been from the Department of Labor Statistics, look it up for yourself. Department of Labor Statistics reported what DEI initiative, what group of people have these initiatives helped. We were last on the list. Because some people were thinking that, DEI was like, okay, I have Jim Bob over here. He has a master's degree in business, but I'm going to take Tyrone, who has a high school diploma. No, it has not benefited Black Americans as some people may think emotionally. See, that's the thing about when you look at mass media, even some social media network channels, they are just saying things. Nothing is backed by statistics. They never really show the numbers. But here on Blacklogic, hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you're notified every time I go live and release a video. I show statistics majority of the time, but I've showed those statistics numerous of times right here on the channel, ladies and gentlemen. But again, regardless of how you feel about what I'm saying, prove me wrong. DEI initiatives have helped majority white women and white men and immigrants more so than foundational Black Americans. I know that might bother a couple of people. I understand it's very easy to think otherwise. Okay? But nonetheless, I digress. Now, LA Fitness, they took your sweat and they took your wallet, because now the FTC, also known as the Federal Trade Commission, ladies and gentlemen, is taking LA Fitness to court, alleging that the gym chain made it excessively difficult to cancel your memberships, ranking in hundreds of millions in unwanted recurring fees. And consumers were reportedly forced to mail in forms, endure endless call loops, or speak to unreachable managers to end memberships. This lawsuit could open the door for massive fines and reforms in the fitness industry. No, it should go everywhere. Do you know, when you guys are doing like these trial memberships or these temporary memberships, and they automatically renew it if you don't cancel it, which is fine. Now I'm starting to see in prompts, okay? I'm starting to see in prompts where companies are stating, if you do not want this to automatically renew, click this box. Because I think they've been knowing about this lawsuit by the FTC. And listen, when the feds come after you, they have what, a 90+ prosecution rate. They have a 90% win to lose ratio rate. I'm talking about they majority times win. You know, they win 9 times out of 10. This is going to spark other companies to do what I've seen with other memberships and subscription programs. If you do not want this to renew after the trial period, check here. And that is what all of them do. Because some of us, we just do the trial period because we may need our program, we may need our software. We just want to watch that show. Okay, we're going to binge watch it. And sometimes when they release those shows weekly, they do that so you can sign up for their membership. You can sign up for their subscription. So what I do is I look at when the season starts and when the season ends, and then I sign up for the trial and I binge watch it and then I cancel it. And I've had, different memberships depending on what I'm doing on social media, on different programs I use, and they make it very, very freaking difficult for you to cancel your membership. Oh, click here. First, you have to find it. You got to go to the little gear logo, and you got to click this and you got to click that. Then you got to go here. And next thing you know, they say, well, send us an email or call this number. And then when you call the number, you're on hold forever. It's like they are purposely trying to deter you from canceling your membership. Oh, you know what? Email us this form, download this form, print it out. Why can't I email it? We're talking about this is 2025. Why can't I email this cancellation form to cancel my subscription, to cancel my membership? Why can't I email this form? As a matter of fact, why am I emailing a form? Why am I mailing in a form? Why can't I just go into LA Fitness? Why can't I go into Crunch? Why can't I go into any establishment and cancel my membership? When I joined the club, I came right here to join it. You mean to tell me that I can join and I can sign up for a subscription online through digital prompts, right? Clicking here, putting my information in, my address, my credit card information, yada, yada, yada. Then when I want to cancel, I got to call you, but I didn't have to call you to sign up. Oh, when I cancel, I have to mail in a form. Oh, when I cancel, I have to be on hold for an hour. All of this is fraudulent. All of these are psychological tricks to have you to hang up, I'll call tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes a week, and week becomes a month. And now you pay for another month. So you get back on the call and it all happens again. How do I know this? Because it's happened to me. I can't tell you what particular company, because I've had many subscriptions and trial and memberships, and either I forgot. But now what I do is take, for instance, the trial is 7 days. The trial is 3 days. I always set a reminder, or a services that I maybe want to use temporarily, like for 3 or 6 months. I go on my calendar and I make reminders for myself to cancel it a day before it takes place. Again, that's a good trick that you guys can do. But yeah, they should crack down on every single entity, every single business, every single trial, every single membership. That there should be a some sort of toggle or prompt that if you do not want this to renew after the trial period, click here. That's what should absolutely happen. You guys have a great and wonderful day. This is Blacklogic.